Encouragement in the hog pen. I've had a lot of opportunities to quit, and so have others. I knew a preacher who had a large church but decided to quit preaching. He said that God wasn't good enough to him during his first 2 or 3 years of ministry. At the time, he was driving a Lincoln Continental, pastoring 1,000 people, and had an unlimited salary at his church, but he quit. He said that he quit preaching because he had a hard time during the first 2 or 3 years of his ministry. I said to him, I don't understand you. Do you think a boy can leave school, become a carpenter, and the first day gets the money of a master carpenter who's been doing it for 20 years? He said, no. I said, what right do you have to think that way? What right do you have to think that the day you get out of Bible school is the day that you are going to have the same things as Kenneth Hagin? That's not rational. You're not even thinking correctly when you say a thing like that. You have to grow in God. You have to grow in maturity. There was a man named Abraham, who all of us would like to emulate. While Abraham was praying one day, God said, Abraham, you know that little 12-year-old son named Isaac? He was born to you when you were 100, and now you are 112. I would like for you to take him and offer him up as a burnt offering to me. You are hugging him so much that you have not hugged me lately. I would just like to know which one of us you love the most. Take him to Mount Moriah and offer him up as a sacrifice to me. God was testing the consecration of Abraham, and God will test all of us in order to prepare us for greater levels of service that we may not yet be ready for or be willing and able to pursue and persevere. Abraham had less when he left the Ur of the Chaldees than at the end of his life. Because God increased him, Abraham may have been 1,000 times richer when he went to heaven than when he first began his journey. You have to believe that God gives increase over time, that there is a growth process in spiritual things. But that preacher didn't want to accept what I was saying. Maybe he does now, but at that moment he didn't want to accept these truths and decided to quit. When I first went out to preach, I went to a little country schoolhouse. Nobody was going to invite me out to preach, and I knew it. Therefore, I went to the little country schoolhouse and started my own meetings. After the second day, the farmer that I was staying with asked, how long are you going to be here? I don't know. I've never done one of these before. Well, he said, at my house and at my table, if you don't work, you don't eat. He even meant that for his wife. She kept the house, did the cooking, plus worked in the field. So he was not an easy man to be around. Well, I said, I am preaching every day. He said back to me, that's not work. I don't count that as work. I said, well, what is work? Feeding my hogs would be work. If you feed my hogs every day, you can eat at the table and sleep in the bed. Well, I could have quit right there. That certainly looked like a good opportunity to quit. Who wants to feed dirty hogs? They had 40 or 50 of them. I fed them one time, and then I laid down in the cornfield right beside the hog pens and began to cry. I said, God, I've always been the prodigal son. Even before I was saved, I was the prodigal son. And now I know I'm the prodigal son because here are the hogs, and I'm staying with them and feeding them. As I was weeping, God spoke to me, if you won't quit, I will bless you. I asked, Lord, do you mean that? He said, you won't have to feed the hogs after this time. If you won't quit here, I will bless you further there. I said, Lord, I am willing. I got up and fed hogs. I don't know exactly how long I fed them in the days to come, but for weeks and weeks I fed hogs. So God kept his covenant and his promise because I didn't quit. There are thousands and thousands of Americans, and those of other nationalities too, of course, who have quit. I've met preachers who have quit. I've met bankers who have quit. History is replete with stories of great men and women who have been confronted with astounding odds against them. Poverty, illness, oppression, loss, grief, and more adversity than most people could overcome. But they all accomplished incredible feats of leadership, invention, discovery, and success because they never quit. On the other hand, there are just as many accounts of persons who had greatness within them, but when circumstance began, there are thousands and thousands of Americans, and those of other nationalities too, of course, who have quit. I've met preachers who have quit. I've met bankers who have quit. History is replete with stories of great men and women who have been confronted with astounding odds against them. poverty, illness, oppression, loss, grief, and more adversity than most people could overcome. But they all accomplished incredible feats of leadership, invention, discovery, and success because they never quit. On the other hand, there are just as many accounts of persons who had greatness within them, but when circumstance became more than they could bear, they instead finished in defeat. The words of Hudson Taylor bear repetition. A man can be spiritually consecrated and dedicated, but of very little use to God if his life is not disciplined. When I first set out on my worldwide journey to minister in many countries, the word gospel was so very important to me. The first two letters of the word gospel spell go. I promised the Lord I would never stop going and that I would go anywhere and everywhere to preach his word. I would not quit. In the city of South Bend, when the Great Depression affected the Studebaker Corporation, the president of the company, Mr. Erskine, shot his brains out with a gun. He quit. He didn't see that he would enter prosperity when Roosevelt's policies got going. He didn't see that in 6 or 7 years there would be a war in Europe and that Studebaker would have 25,000 people working for it. He just quit, and he did worse than that. He halted everything by blowing his brains out. He went on into eternity, and Studebaker, for a great number of years, marched on into victory. So businessmen quit. Divorces mean that you quit. You just quit holding things together. You just quit working on it. And when you quit, you don't win. Quitters never win, and winners never quit. It is when the going gets rough and tough that the tough get going. It is when a person with backbone gets down to zero that he or she says, I'm not going to quit down here. I'm going to climb the ladder of success. I'm going to climb the ladder of happiness and peace. I am not a quitter. I will never quit, and I hate quitting. A minister once told me that God had called him to the great city of Bombay and that he would have a great evangelistic outreach that would stir the whole city like the revival in Manila, Philippines. I rejoiced with him. He said, have lunch with me and my wife and tell us something about India. I said, fine. We met in a beautiful restaurant, and he began first by saying, God has called me to Bombay. God is going to do great and beautiful things. God is going to save many people. Tears were running down his face. His wife jumped to her feet and said, I will not go to India. I will not give up my beautiful home or anything. I will not go to India. I'm not going. And right there she went off and cried. The husband's whole mission and vision for God came to a grinding halt because of his wife's refusal to obey God. Soon afterwards, she died of cancer, and he had a heart attack and retired. God's will is that you walk in his word as he has identified it to you. When he says to do something, just do it. I just want you by all means to say, never will I quit. I'm going to keep marching forward. I could have quit when my father said you'll die. Don't go. Commentary of encouragement from the HOG pen. I will not go to India. I'm not going. And right there she went off and cried. The husband's whole mission and vision for God came to a grinding halt because of his wife's refusal to obey God. Soon afterwards, she died of cancer, and he had a heart attack and retired. God's will is that you walk in his word as he has identified it to you. When he says to do something, just do it. I just want you by all means to say, never will I quit. I'm going to keep marching forward. I could have quit when my father said you'll die. Don't go. I could have said, oh, well, I won't go. A lot of kids would have quit right there. I didn't. I walked out of my father's house that day and began to preach the gospel. A week later, when I was told I couldn't have a place to eat and sleep if I didn't feed hogs, I could have quit again. So I fed hogs, but I could have quit. Many other things happened in those early days of ministry. Things that appeared to be good reasons to quit. Commentary of encouragement from the HOG pen. Here are 9 carry-home lessons for me from this message. Number 1, just as a carpenter needs years to become a master, spiritual growth and success require patience and perseverance. One should not expect immediate rewards without enduring challenges. Number 2, like Abraham's test from God, challenges often serve as opportunities for growth and deeper commitment. True faith involves being willing to sacrifice and prioritize spiritual development over comfort. Number 3, Success often comes through hard work and dedication, even in unglamorous tasks. The act of feeding hogs symbolizes the humility and effort needed to achieve one's goals. Number 4. The core message emphasizes that quitting leads to missed opportunities and failure. Many successful individuals have faced immense challenges, but chose to persevere. Number 5. Spiritual and personal growth requires discipline. Without it, one's potential remains unfulfilled. Number 6. Stories of those who faced adversity but continued to push forward remind us that resilience can lead to great accomplishments. Number 7. Believing that there is a divine plan or purpose can provide strength during tough times. Trusting in God's timing and promises is essential. Number 8. Personal decisions, whether to persevere or give up, can significantly affect not only one's life, but also the lives of others. The story of the minister highlights how one person's refusal to follow a calling can halt a larger purpose. And lastly, number 9. A firm resolve to continue moving forward, regardless of obstacles, is crucial for achieving one's goals.